Welcome to the first episode of Game Feuds. I'm your host, Adam Olinger, and I'm as passionate about games as I am about movies, so this seemed like a nice extension of my channel. Kicking things off is Uncharted 2 versus Uncharted 3, although it's not that fair of a fight. We all know Uncharted 2 is vastly superior to the third outing.
Said no one ever.
Greg Miller, what a lovely surprise. Thanks for coming on the show. Huge fan of the 10 out of 10 you gave Uncharted 3 when it released. That was sarcasm.
Cut the crap, Adam. You want a feud? Let's feud.
Uncharted 2, Among Thieves brings the sexy back. All our favorites return. Nathan Drake is once again played to perfection by Nolan North. Then you have his best friend and mentor, Victor Sullivan, stealing every scene he's in.
Which is what, 2 scenes? He's barely in the second game, and Naughty Dog quickly corrected that mistake in the third by making him one of the central characters again.
Unfortunately, we see nothing of Chloe in part 3. She's virtually gone, which is a damn shame because she was such a great character.
I'll take a Sullivan Drake game any day of the week.
But dat ass, Greg. Speaking of, what happened there? Seriously, from 2 to 3, not only did she lose her personality, but also her figure?
It was a different team of people working on part 3, so the artist chose to update some of the character models. I'm going to be the bigger adult here for once and move this thing along. The main cast is still intact in Drake's deception, and more interesting people are brought into the mix, such as Cutter and the fantastic villains Catherine Marlowe and her right-hand man Talbot. Plus, we can't forget one of the biggest highlights of the franchise, Elena Fisher, who is once more voiced by the lovely Emily Rose.
Marlowe was a cool idea, but a golden girl is not near the threat that a huge former Russian operative is. Lecherevic was a badass turned warlord, and that's one combination you don't want to with.
You gonna mention the Avatar Na'vi creatures, or are you gonna try to avoid that one?
Hey, they were more threatening than the Ghost Rider heads from part 3.
We're done here.
I'm not going to dive into the nitty-gritty plot points, this is nitty-gritty, but more so how the stories were handled. Amy Hennig and Neil Druckmann outdid themselves this time around with a script that thinks not only of the gamers, but more importantly of the story. There's a cliff-hanging train foreshadow where we see a very banged-up Drake. There's an insanely cool helicopter chase sequence that takes our hero through an entire city. This chopper rips through windows and levels entire buildings in order to kill Drake and company. Later, we have a tank escape, full Warzone type situations against heavy armored soldiers, and my favorite level in the game, which has you taking Drake across a full train as it travels across the countryside. And beyond all these moments...
Beyond!
Right, like I was saying, beyond all these moments, the player gets to slow down a bit with Drake, where we get to meet Chloe and catch our breath. There's also the beautifully handled sequence in the Tibetan village, where we get to play soccer with the locals and just take in the beauty that Naughty Dog has created.
If you want to talk about moments of awe, then Uncharted 3 is the place for it. Among Thieves has a train, which is cool, but I raised it an entire cruise ship. One that eventually goes Titanic on us with Drake inside. It's an extremely intense area of the game and just one of the dozen that keep you on edge. Let's also not forget the mansion that goes up in flames with Sully and Nate. They have to shoot their way out of it. Where Uncharted 2 stays familiar, 3 puts itself out there more. The game opens with a bar fight with melee being the only option, and there's also a section devoted to stealth to break up the monotony.
You can keep the stealth segments in The Last of Us. I like my Uncharted stealth free.
Are you done?
Not even close.
Good, I'll continue. Nobody was expecting a flashback to a young Drake escaping a museum, but that's the stuff Naughty Dog constantly throws at us in part 3, and I loved every minute of it. If that wasn't enough, then we can't forget the great battle on the cargo plane that ends up in a beaten Drake at the end of his life wandering the desert. Seeing Sully killed and then come back at the end was a brilliant twist. The writers and team tugged at the heartstrings, but knew deep down that no one wanted to see these characters killed off. This is not that type of experience.
Everything from Uncharted 1 was improved upon in Part 2, from the traversal to the gunplay. The aiming is still a bit loosey-goosey, but if you want to pull a headshot off, you can do it with ease. Every single time. Then there's the multiplayer, a portion of the game that people thought would be tacked on for sure, but turned out to be just as exciting as the single player. It kept things simple and fine-tuned. Yes, the X-ray perk was bullshit, but not enough to ruin the experience. I felt like 3 was lacking in multiple areas. The gunplay didn't seem as solid, climbing was a bit too sticky at times, and the multiplayer was overly complicated with less interesting maps. Plus, as a trophy whore, not having that trophy checklist was a huge blow for me. Huge blow.
That did sting a little bit, but not enough to sully 3's good name. Certainly not enough to knock Uncharted 3 down a peg. You claim there is a worse level of shooting and climbing, which is all subjective. I, however, only bring facts to the table, such as the newly reformed melee combat system and the inclusion of strong stealth abilities. Then there are the little things, like being able to toss grenades back at foes, or the further enhancements to the gesture system.
Yes, there's nothing quite as riveting as watching our heroes sidestep their way through a small crevasse for the 10th time. Let me reenact that for you. Game's loading right now. Hang tight. Nope.
Because dropping ladders and hoisting people up in part 2 was that much more enthralling.
Dat ass though, Greg.
You need help. I'm not sure how you could possibly win this or what sort of dumbass loophole you are going to find to suggest Uncharted 2 is superior in graphics.
It's all about the environment and the character models, Greggy.
Don't call me that.
Yes, 3 might have another level of shaders and bloom lighting attached, but I'll take gunfights in Shambhala, cave jumping in Borneo, and sniper battles in Nepal all day, every day.
The team has never looked better, outside of the Uncharted 4 beautiful teaser we've already seen. Naughty Dog gave us water in 1, ice in 2, and desert sands in 3. This one comes down to preference, but to me, Uncharted 3 gives the gamer not only the more interesting settings, but also a lot more variety. As for music, well, I mean, Greg Edmonson scored both games. His most notable work outside of the series has been King of the Hill and Firefly.
And this is just one more instance where the games knock it out of the park. The music takes these interactive movies to an entirely different level, and the compositions really do rival that of a film. If you, for some inexplicable reason, could only play one game in the Uncharted franchise, I'll make it a 2. Its pacing, story, gameplay, and all-around presentation are better. It's a giant step up from its predecessor, and it's set a new bar for other games to strive for. There is no question Uncharted 3 is amazing, but with just minor updates, it feels more like a Uncharted 2.5 than a fully realized sequel.
Uncharted 2 works and it works well. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Instead, Drake's deception focused on tightening up the gameplay, telling a stronger story, mixing up the scenarios a bit more, and as a bonus, basically removed the tedious typical final villain.
Yes, that QuickTime event to cap things off was really exciting stuff.
Hell of a lot better than that grenade-throwing circle jerk.
Good point.
But really, Adam, thank you so much for having me. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can find more of my work over at IGN.com, where I host Up at Noon every Monday, and then find me on every social media platform as Game Over Greggy.
Always fun having you on, Greg. I thank you for coming. I really can't say enough great things about you, so I won't even bother. I'd like to hear from you guys watching, though. What's the #1 Uncharted game? Pop it in the comments below. Subscribe, like, share, do all that other garbage YouTubers ask for. And until next time, feud on. That's the tagline. Game's still loading. Just push forward on the thumbstick.